Okay, hello everyone. I'm Apocalypse, the Geek Guru, and it's Tuesday, so you know what that means. We had another great episode of the Gilded Age last night, so let's get right into it. This is the Gilded Age, episode 6. Heads have rolled for less. It was absolutely incredible, so let's get right into it. It starts off with the train crash. Uh, Remember, at the end of the last episode, one of Mr. Russell's trains had come off the tracks in I forget. I want to say Pennsylvania or something. And it starts out. I'm about to show you right now. Starts out with the train crash. I mean, just and when the intro was going, like when the intro was coming up, which I loved. I still love the intro. It's so great. But I was looking at my phone, like checking something on my phone, like I don't know, YouTube or something. And as soon as the show started, like I, put my phone down, looked up, and I was like, oh, fuck! Like the way it looks, like you just saw it. I mean, I've never seen a train crash, but I mean, it looks like something I've never seen before, you know? uh, so, Ken then goes to the Russells. They're there with their assistant Clay and Miss Barton, like from the Red Cross. They're all there, and they're talking about how, fortunately, only 5 people were killed, which, that's still 5 people. That's terrible. But they say no women and no children were hurt. And they're talking about, and then he hands Miss Barton a check. He's like, here, this is, for doing what you're doing. And we don't get to see how much the check is, but based on her reaction, I'm going to take a wild guess. And based on him, I'm going to take a wild guess and say it was a lot of money. Like probably a few $1,000s. Like, because she sees it, she's like, well, thank you. She literally goes, eyes go wide. I can show you that, because, like, but, so she's like, thank you, and walks off, and they have a dude from, yeah, it was probably a good amount of money. So they have this dude, he's like, yeah. She walks off, and Clay is like, oh yeah, before she walks off, she asks Miss Russell, Mrs. Russell, if she's gonna be at the next Red Cross meeting, and Mr. Russell is like, she'll be there, like she's gonna be there. We're not gonna like hide from this. And then Clay says that the police actually want to talk to Mr. Russell, which is kind of which is fairly standard in this kind of thing. It's his company. The police are gonna want to talk to him and know what happens, and we'll get into that later as it happens. Well, as I talk about it, and they have a dude there from the press, and they got like one of those big old cameras, and Mr. Clay is just like, hey, he's from the press. He just showed up, and Mr. Russell's like, okay, we'll let him take the picture. We don't want him to think that we're hiding, which I like. He's not like Mr. Russell is not the type to like run and hide from this type of thing. He's gonna face it. He's gonna go out head on. So then they get the picture, and then and you get the picture. So it cuts to the Van Ryns, and obviously they're all reading about it. I just noticed Agnes, Ada, and Marion. They're all sitting in the parlor, and I just noticed they're all reading different papers. Like Marion's reading the New York Times, Agnes is reading the Daily Graphic, and Ada is reading the New York Tribune. And I have no idea about like those newspapers or anything, especially at that time. But I'm wondering if this is like if that kind of shows the type of people that they are. Like if those are like different newspapers who sort of present the news in different ways. So I'm just like wondering like if that's anyone from New York who knows anything about those newspapers. You're like, let me know, because I don't know. I was just wondering. I was just thinking about that. And I love Ada has like those glasses that you like that you hold up Like, you can kind of see it right here. I'm taking a better picture of it later. I don't know if she's probably used them before. I just haven't noticed. She's got those little glasses. I think it's funny. But and Agnes is a legend. She says, it cuts to her, and literally the first thing she says is, 5 people. It doesn't seem like that bad, or something like that. And she says that it was Mr. Russell's fault, out of part of negligence and stuff. And Marion's like, well, what? That's not fair. You know what? It wasn't really him. It wasn't his fault. And then Agnes says, well, he's the captain. It happened under his watch. Or do people in that class not take accountability or whatever? And she makes a good point. Like, regardless of who, again, we'll get into like how it happened and everything. But regardless, if it was negligence, then it does go up the top. It does go up the line, and he is in a way responsible. But so anyway, they move on. She asks, Ada changes the subject because Marion and Agnes kind of start arguing about that. So Ada, lovely Ada, she changes the subject. She's like, so when is the next Red Cross meeting or whatever? Like, when's the next charity meeting? And Marion's like, well, I don't think, I'm not sure if Miss Barton, someone's, can't talk today. She's like, I'm not sure if someone that Miss Barton's expecting will be able to come. And Agnes is like, and who is that? Like, why are you being so, she said elliptical, which I thought that was exercise equipment, and like, the pattern of orbits, but I guess it has a third meaning too. So she's like, why are you being so cagey? I use my own terminology. And Marion is like, oh, Mrs. Russell. Because obviously Mrs. Russell is gonna, she's gonna, man, why can't I talk today? Mrs. Russell obviously plays a big part in the charity. And, she's got a lot of money. And Miss Barton has made it clear that she wants her there, regardless of how anybody else feels about her. She's even willing to let Miss Chamberlain in. And we all know how everyone feels about Miss Chamberlain. So, which I'm still like, what is her first name? What is Miss Chamberlain's first name? Like, whatever. So Ada starts to... As soon as Marion's like, Mrs. Russell, Agnes is obviously, rolls her eyes like, oh my God, that woman. She doesn't say that. She doesn't say that, but you can totally tell it's what she's thinking. And so Ada's like, hey, can we let Marion off the witness stand for 10 minutes at least? Because she's always getting, like, with Aunt Agnes, she is always getting, like, put up, like, why is this happening? Who is this person? She really is, like, on trial, like, all the time. And it must get really annoying. So Ada talks about how the opera war is heating up. Because remember, the old money, they have an opera house, and the new money, they want boxes for that opera house. Like, there's not enough boxes or whatever. Like, the big high-up seats. We showed them in it was the episode before last. When they all went to the opera. Miss Fane, Mr. and Mrs. Fane, Miss Russell and Mrs. Russell, and Marion. They all went to the opera. Mr. Rakes was there. And sat in those little boxes. Well, apparently they're like, it's heating up. And Marion is like, well, why don't they just build more boxes for the new people? And Agnes says that because that's the last that's like the last bastions of decency and standards in this thing. Like, the opera house is one of the last things that the old money, where it's like, it's just old money, they're not, that's one of the last things where they're kind of like gatekeeping and just not letting new people in. And so Agnes she's obviously all for that. She's just like, no, we can't. Like, we're not going to do that. And so then it cuts to Mr. Russell and Mr. Clay. And they're talking about why the train crashed. And apparently it was a broken axle. One of the axles broke. And Mr. Russell's like, well, how did this happen? We're a new line. None of our axles should be breaking. You know, they're brand new. And it was like, well, apparently they were old axles. They were used on, like, someone down the... He mentioned that someone down the chain, someone down the line took old used axles from old trains and put them on his new ones to cut costs and save money and, like, skim off the top. All, technical con man economic jargon or whatever, I don't know. So, like, he's basically screwing over the company and got 5 people killed. And Mr. Russell is like, okay, find out who did this. And he says, get Mr. Pinkerton on it. Now, I was like, when I heard that, I was like, oh my god. Because I've mentioned before that this game, some of it reminds me of Red Dead Redemption, because it's in a sort of similar time period, the wagons and buggies and stuff like that. And for those who don't know or haven't heard me mention it, Red Dead Redemption is a video game that takes place in a fictional version of America in 1889, so about 7 years later, 7 years after this, roughly. So it's very similar in technology, except it takes place more in the West. It's like a Wild West Western game. But anyway, in the game, you fight against the Pinkerton Detective Agency, who was a real detective agency back in those times, as you just mentioned. Like, hey, give me Mr. Pinkerton. Give me his, they were called Pinkertons. And I remember not long after the game had come out, the Pinkerton Detective Agency, who I believe is still around, still a thing, they were trying to sue the game, but I don't think it went through. But anyway, so he's like, I just loved that, I was like, he's like, give me some Pinkerton. We want the Pinkertons, get this man, figure out who did this. So, like I said, and he's like, give them all the help they need and keep me up to date. And, like I said, Mr. Russell is not going to take this sitting down. He's going to figure out, he's like, who did this? Figure it out. And then his secretary comes in. And she hands him the paper, and he's like, hey, we're still doing pretty good. Like, apparently it didn't hit them too bad in the market. They took a hit, obviously, but they're crawling back. And his secretary says that's because Miss Barton gave a good quote saying that he was grief-stricken, which I'm sure he is. I mean, at least a little bit. 5 people died. You'll see later that that actually does get to him. He's really upset about that. So then it cuts to the downstairs at the Van Ryns, and Peggy's about to go out with Marion, and she's talking to the cook hey, do you have any errands to run? And she asks Miss Armstrong, and the cook is like, no, I'm good. And the cook's like, what about you, Miss Armstrong? The old white lady. And Miss Armstrong's just like, meaning what? Meaning nothing. The cook's like, meaning nothing. Miss Scott's offering us to do us a good turn. And the freaking Miss Armstrong, she's just like, why? Is she suggesting we can't do our work? Bauer, that's the cook's name. Bauer. That's what it is. I knew that, but I forgot. I don't think I wrote it down. Anyway. Miss Armstrong says that, and Peggy's just like, I'll be off, Miss Bauer. I love that. Anytime the woman just says anything, Peggy's just like, wow. Which, honestly, I feel is the proper reaction to prejudice. Just laugh them off. If anything, make them feel silly. I think I might have said this before, but I feel as though that's the proper response. Not just butting heads against them. but like making him fall, sidestepping and falling flat, like just like you're stupid. Which is exactly what Peggy does. She doesn't, engage with her. She's just like, you, no, like whatever. And even the cook is just like, and she comes after Peggy leaves. She comes up and the cook is like, "What's the matter with you?" And Miss Armstrong is like, she's always trying to like cast me off as some poor sad creature, like who's too old to work, to do the work she's employed to do, which is like, it's completely wrong. And obviously she's just like prejudiced, which is that's not funny. But I'm laughing at something that happens later, which we'll get into, because like even Agnes calls her out. It's fucking hilarious. But so then it cuts to Peggy and Marion. Peggy, as always, dressed far better than Marion, at least in my opinion. I mean, it's not like Marion's wearing something bad, which I feel like they're reusing a lot of dresses, which makes sense. I mean, especially since they're not like, super mega rich, but I'm just wondering like about the costume budget. Was it like, okay, we only have enough for a couple dresses? I don't know. I'm just overthinking it or something. Show like she's I don't know. He is always better dressed than Marion. But they're talking about the crash, and this is where Peggy Marion's like, oh, I'm so terrible. Those people died, and Peggy goes, I feel sorry for their wives. Making dinner for their husbands, not knowing that they're never gonna come back. Which, yeah, that's terrible. But I feel like she's kind of like forgetting the fact that 5 people died. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. So anyway, that causes Marion to say that, Marion's like, yeah, you never know what's gonna happen next, so we should try to get the most out of what's happening now. And oh no, Peggy says that, and then Marion's like, sometimes it's hard to tell what's happening now, and Peggy's like, is this about Mr. Rakes? And she's saying that, Peggy's basically saying that I like Mr. Rakes. He's a good guy. He's a good guy. He's a nice lawyer. He'd be good for you. And Marion's like, I sense a but coming. And then Peggy goes, but he doesn't seem to have much of a plan. Basically, which he doesn't. All he really wants to do is try and get his foot in the door in high society so he can be with Marion, which is an idea. Like, that's not a plan. Like, so it's like, where is he going? And they've made, actually, I've talked about this, I think I have, but they've made, even Mrs. Russell, when he was at the opera, she made mention to Marion that, he doesn't have a whole lot of money, so he's going to find it very difficult to keep up with high society. So, it's going to be interesting to see, I'm very interested to see how these, because they've been playing at their relationship since the first episode, so I'm pretty sure, well, it's not like we're that far into the series, but you know what I'm saying. So I'm interested to see where this is going to go with them, especially with him. So, they get to the charity thing. That's what they're going to, the charity function, and Miss Barton comes up, and she's like, hey, thank you for coming. I read your article, Miss Scott. Thank you. Introductions. They walk inside, and Miss Fane is there to greet them or whatever, and then it cuts to Ada. Hold on. Pause. Rewind on this thing is freaking ridiculous. It's so quick. But it cuts to Ada, and Miss Bauer is coming in to like repay her the money that she owed. Ada in her glasses. But she comes in to repair it. But Bannister is like, he wasn't like skulking around or anything. He was literally just polishing some silver, walking in, and he kind of sees them, talking. Like he sees them, talking. He's like, what's going on there? Butler. Always got to be. Butler always got to be snooping around. Butler always did it. So anyway, then he's like, yeah, what's going on? So we'll get to that a little bit later. But then it cuts to the inside of the charity function, and Miss Barton is like, yeah, okay, we're waiting on Mrs. Russell, basically saying that, because I think they want to have Mrs. Russell, like, on the board, like, sit on the board, which she's donated enough, but basically I keep wanting to call her Miss Fine, Miss Fane. She's like, hey, Mr. Russell's gonna be here soon, and Miss Morris, the one whose husband killed himself, and is on all black, and she's still in all black. She's still in mourning, and she's like, what? she's still going on like, what the hell? Why is this murderer coming to us after she's killed more people? And Miss Barton is just like, Miss Morris, you've suffered a great deal, and I'm sorry for it. But I hope you can recognize that this meeting is not the place to address your society squabbles. And she's like, and then Miss Morris is like, this is not a society squabble since Mrs. Russell is not in society. Which is when Mrs. Russell walks in. And even she says, what an interesting moment for me to arrive. And her dresses are getting a lot better. Like, that's a lot better. It's not some gaudy color combination. And it's got, like, more understated. It's more like something like that woman right there, who's covered up by the closed caption. It's got the hat. It's not... I think she got a new dressmaker. I don't know. It's good. But, so basically they're like, all in favor of having Mrs. Russell on the board, and Marion, Miss Barton, and Miss Fane are the only ones who raise their hand out of like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I don't think Peggy. I'm sorry, but I don't think Peggy counts right now. She can't vote. Ooh, didn't mean it like that. She can't, she's not part of this club, so therefore her vote doesn't count. She can't. Yeah, out of the 2, 4, 6, 12 women there, only 3 of them are like, oh yeah, let's have Mrs. Russell on the board, and it's basically the people that know her. And as you saw, Miss Barton stands up and she's like, I would like to remind you that no one in this city has done more real good for my cause. And then the rest of them suck it up and raise their hand, and then except Mrs. Morris, who stands up and is like, so money is the deciding factor here. Yet again, what a sad and vulgar world we live in. And Miss Barton basically makes the good point that, they're not getting together a debutante ball. They're raising money to help people in dire need all over the country. And then Miss Morris is just like, and because I don't have enough as Mrs. Russell, I'm being jettisoned while she's being enthroned. And Mrs. Russell's just like, how thrilling you make it sound. Like, which is a good point. It's like, all you do, like, it's a council for the Red Cross, which is like, y'all are it. Those like 12 women are like all the Red Cross. I'm pretty sure. Like, that's it. Those 12 women are the entirety of the Red Cross. Well, of the like board. Obviously they have more people who like actually, the medics and stuff. Not important. But all you're doing is... And then Miss Fane is like, no one's being jettisoned. Like, we're not kicking you off. But obviously Mrs. Morris, she's not having it. She's like, I'm leaving. I hope you all have fun with your new member. And I said last episode that I thought that might... excuse me. Need to eat some. I said last episode that might be the last time that we saw her. But I think that's going to be the last time we see her. I think that's it for her. She had her little story arc. And that was it. If we see her again, I mean, I just don't think... I'm not sure how else they would bring her back. Because this was really all... She was the other charity lady. And now she's not part of the charity. So, her husband was the alderman. And he's not around anymore. So, there's just no real connection. Unless they have her try and go after Mrs. Russell. Or show her, like... unless they show her, like... when it's like, days, a few weeks later, maybe a couple episodes down the road. How many episodes are in this season? I'll have to look that up later. But, I want to say it's like 10, 13 or something. But anyway, unless they show her later down the road and she's like, haggard or like, working at a house of ill repute. For those of you that don't know what that is, it's a whorehouse. Which begs the question, why would use another word for it? Anyway, so unless they show her like really down on her luck, I think that's basically it for her. So she storms out, and then Mrs. Barton is like, it's like, well, shall we have a cup of coffee while we regroup? High society women, gotta love it. And so yeah, she comes over to Miss Barton comes over to Marion and Peggy, and she's just like, hey, good job on your article, this and that, and she's asking, and then she asks Marion if she's made any progress with Miss Chamberlain, and she's just like, Marion's like, well, I'm gonna be there on next Thursday. And Miss Fane is just like, oh dear, are you really? Are you sure? I was rather hoping that would be forgotten. Like, she's willing to accept Mrs. Russell, but she's just like really, Mrs. Chamberlain too? Like, oh my God. Oh man. And Miss Barton's just like, no opportunity to raise funds will be forgotten. And Miss Fane's just like, come on. And what did she say there? Opportunity areas must be forgotten. And she says that, and surely no one decent could doubt Miss Brooks's motives. Which, I'm wondering, like, basically saying that, like, okay, the reason that, basically you can't hang out with Miss Chamberlain because it's like, oh, why are you hanging out with Miss Chamberlain? What are you gonna... And I'm just like, what the fuck? What do people think that they would be doing together? Having some sort of, like, Roman orgy? With, what the... She had an affair with one dude and then stayed faithful to that guy. It was the guy who was... I just don't get it, man. I'm glad that we've taken a few steps forward in that regard. I'm just like, what do people think they're doing? Debauchery. So anyway, she says that, no one decent could doubt Miss Brooks's motives. And Miss Fane is just like, well, maybe not. But there are plenty of people in New York who are not decent at all. Which, I'm glad to see that that's changed. That New York is now a bustling utopia full of humanitarians. Moving on. So, Marion and Peggy, they step out and they're like, Peggy's saying that she's got to go to the Globe. They're about to head back home. And Marion hails a cab. And she's like, hey, can you take us to, Cedar Street on Lower Manhattan and then to 61st? And the cab driver is like, I'll drive you, but not her. And Marion's just like, what do you mean? Aren't you trying to make money? Aren't you a businessman? And he's just like, step back. And she's like, I will not step back. And he literally just, pulls. That's literally, damn, that was literally the caption. I gotta show you that again. But yeah, so, and I kind of like how they're just sort of, they didn't, come out with it real quick. I feel as though they're doing it more to show, with an exclamation mark and everything. Oh, man. That's great. Love this show. I feel as though they're doing it to show Marion's naivete more than anything. Like showing that she just really doesn't understand how people are. I guess I'm not. I'm assuming. I think Peggy even said this before. Like when Marion said that, I've never met anyone like you, and when Peggy was like, do you mean colored? I'm guessing that there weren't a whole lot of black people where Marion lived, or that she didn't interact with them. She's obviously not used to seeing racism, even on like that. As far as racism goes, like, hey, not picking you up in your cab, that's pretty low down. Like, that's some pretty subtle racism. It's messed up, yeah, totally. But I'm not like trying to downplay it. I'm just saying like that's like mild racism, like compared to like the serious the shit you get like in the South. Like, I think they're just showing that like that was something pretty small, and Marion's just like, oh my god, how rude, like so I think they're just doing it to show that she's like not, she does not understand how the world is. But she's just like, how rude. Man, I never really watched Full House. But anyway, Peggy's just like, yeah, but not unusual. What was all that? Like what was the point of you fighting for that? And, Marion's just like, well, aren't some fights worth fighting? Like, aren't some points worth fighting? Peggy's just like, not if it makes me late for my meeting. She's like, let me hail the cab this time. If they stop, then we're good, and we know they'll take me. And she makes the point, like I did, like, this is like your first experience of prejudice. I've been dealing with bigots my whole life. If I stopped to fight every single one, I'd never get anything done. And then she's like, let me hail the cab this time. And this one old white dude with a beard, he goes right past and looks right at him, goes right past. And then another one pulls up and is like, hey, how you doing? I like how they show, it's, again, I've never been to New York, but I've heard that, like, it can still, I guarantee, like, it can still be like that, I'm sure. I've heard, people having trouble getting cabs. It happens. It still happens. It's terrible. That we still, again, like I said, I'm glad we're taking steps in certain parts of society, but we're still a couple steps behind. But hey, no society is perfect. But anyway, then it cuts back to the charity women, and Miss Fane is basically apologizing for Mrs. Morris. And, man, freaking rewind on this thing is too fast. Basically, Mrs. Russell is just like, I've had to deal with worse, she's basically saying that, just as we're getting somewhere, it's always something, and basically, saying that she's just starting to get into society, and it's like, oh, now this train crash. I keep wanting to say plane crash, but it's like they're not there yet. I don't think they even had planes yet. I forget when. I'm not great with dates, but I do remember that it was the Wright brothers, Orville, and the other one. Not great with names either. That's why I have to write them down. And they were at Kitty Hawk Airfield. That's all I know. I don't know. Anyway, so they're talking about the plane, and this is another. This will come up again later. It's like she's upset about the train crash because it's messing up her getting into high society. Like it's like, oh God, I was just starting to get in, now this train crash. So she's very callous, like very like cold-hearted. Cold-hearted. And Mrs. Fane, she's like, okay, anyway, Mr. McAllister has written saying that he wants to see your palace on the avenue. Basically saying that when Miss Russell's just like, Ward McAllister wants me to entertain him in my own home. Like, she's just like, oh my God. It's like, he's curious to see. And she's like, this is what she's been waiting for. Like, oh my God. And she's just like, I wonder if he's told Mrs. Astor. And Miss Fane's just like, I think he will. So, this is her getting in, but she says that the service must be English. He uses it to frighten newcomers. And remember, that was the thing when the Butlers were talking, when the two Butlers, Bannister and Church, when they were talking in the thing, that was the thing that they said, that it was like, oh, we do things the English way. Because Bannister is an English butler, like he's British. I haven't been able to like show his voice, but he's British. He sounds British. Okay, so he's English, so he obviously knows the English customs and everything. We'll get into that later. So basically, Miss Fane is just saying like, hey, Ward McAllister is going to come over, and he likes things done the English way. So make sure you do things the English way. And so she's just like, well, we'll manage. Like, we'll be okay. And Miss Fane's like, make sure you do it right. He's not going to give a second chance. And then it cuts to gotta breathe. It cuts to Peggy, and she's meeting with Mr. Fortune. That was his name? Fortune? Fountain? Mr. 500? I don't know. It's Fortune. But anyway, he's saying that, hey, your article increased our subscriptions. Not the story that she wrote, but the article that she wrote about Miss Barton. That increased their subscriptions. And he was like, and the guy's like, hey, it's, not a whole lot of black people have the ability to like get, are able to talk to Clara Barton. Like, not a whole lot of them are like, go up to her and talk to her. And she's just like, I just went up to her and talked to her. And so that's basically what's going on with Peggy. Like, she's, doing good. Her articles are getting traction. So, which will come up later. So then it cuts to Miss Russell, and she's talking with her staff. They're all in the big three downstairs. The chef, the housekeeper, and the butler. And she's basically just like, hey, we're gonna have to do things the English way, The main dish can be French, but do a little, embellishments, English embellishments. Church is just like, so what are we gonna serve? Fish and chips with some sweet pudding? What about boiled beef and carrots? That's what she's just like, oh no, the main dish will be French. And basically, just talking. She's just telling him like, hey, the she's just telling him like, hey, we're gonna have to do things the English way. He likes things the English way, and she tells Church that we're gonna have to, the place setting is gonna have to be the English way. She's like, do you have to? Can you do it? Are you gonna be able to do things the English way? And he's just like, why wouldn't we be able to? Which, as we've already established, he doesn't really know the English way. That was the thing about him and Bannister, like when they were having their little scene in the dining room. Like, he doesn't know the English way. But he's just like, yeah, sure, yeah, we can do it. Because, like, some people might think of butlers as, like, the servant kind of thing. I think I might have talked about this before. But in society, like, the butler, they're way above, like, a footman, even in society. Obviously, they're not, like, high society. They're not going to get invited to, like, the parties and stuff. They're going to be serving at the parties. But they are respected. Like, for instance, in Downton Abbey, the butler of the house was a very well-respected member of the community. And they even asked him to sit on a committee for, like, to decide where some war memorial would go. So the butlers, they were very proud people. Like, they were proud to be a butler. It wasn't like, some people might be like, oh, the butler, you're just like a servant. Oh, hello, my lord. But no, it was a very proud profession of, very proud people. So, wait, and I mentioned that because it's going to be very important later. We'll get into that. I'm like 40. Man, it's going to be a long video. But as she leaves, so she's just like, hey, can we do it? Okay, we can do it. That's how you spell it, Miss Van Ryn. Wow, that is weird. I got to write that down. What was that? R-I-J. Freaking R-I-G. So, Miss Russell walks out, and the chef and Church, they walk back to, they leave. And Miss Bruce, the housekeeper, she goes after Mrs. Russell, and she's like, hey, Mrs., do you know that Miss Van Ryn's that Mrs. Ryan's butler, Mrs. Van Ryn's butler is English, and I think that Mrs. Van Ryn follows things the English way. Like, how about we have him come over and, like, help us out? Like, give us some tips and help us, walk us through walk us through how to do it properly. And, Mrs. Russ, I love how she goes, wrong pause. Mrs. Bruce is like, I think, what she says, I think Mrs. Russell follows the English customs. Mrs. Russell's just like, wouldn't she just? So anyway, she's like, I'll leave that to you. Get him over here, that's on you. So she goes, I'll leave it to you, but don't give him a choice. So Mrs. Russell is going to have Miss Van Ryn's butler come out and help out with the luncheon, which is going to be awesome. I can't wait to get into that. So then it cuts to Peggy at her parents' house. She walks into her mom's house, and her mom is sitting there playing the piano. And basically she's just there to tell her mom that, hey, my writing is doing very well. They said that I've helped out with their subscriptions. And she's like, oh, that's great, tell your father. She's just like, why would I tell him? He's not gonna care. And she basically makes she asks her mom, like, hey, did you have him read my article? And she's just like, yeah, he read it. Yeah, she's just like, but he doesn't care for it. And she tells her that her mom tells Peggy that her dad just wants her to have a career that he feels as though she actually has a chance in. Which I've talked about this before, I think last time, previous episodes, that her dad isn't a dick just to be a dick. Like, yeah, he's not good with tact. Like, he's not good at presenting his view in a non-insulting way. He kind of, like I said, he comes off as a dick when he says stuff, but he's doing it because he loves his daughter. He's a dick because he loves his daughter, and he wants her to have a career that she can that he knows that she can have. Not one that she might have a chance to do, but one that established, like, a concrete, plan. Like, that's why he wanted her to come work at the pharmacy. Now, this is an interesting situation where neither of them are particularly right or wrong. Like, they're both right, and they're both wrong. And I like how they don't play him off, at least in my opinion, they don't play him off as this terrible person, that's this, terrible, evil dad. And I talked about he must have done something in the past, and we found out that she did have some guy that she liked who worked for her dad, and I'm not sure, obviously, seeing as how they aren't together now, I'm going to take a wild guess and say that things ended poorly, and it was probably her dad's fault, whether he fired him or, I don't know, did something worse. I'm not sure, but I feel as though it must have been worse than just, hey, you're fired, get out of here. It had to have been worse than that for her to have such a serious reaction, or as I was saying that, I was like, or maybe not, seeing as how she can be pretty dramatic at times. Because here she is, like, that'd be funny if it did turn out to be nothing and it turns out Peggy's just like a drama queen. That'd be, it's like she's just real dramatic. That'd be funny as hell. But, so basically, her mom is just like, Peggy tells her mom, like, hey, don't come by and, speak with family business to them. Don't come by, like, the Van Ryns. Don't talk to the Van Ryns about our family stuff. Because remember that she got upset with Marion, she got upset that because her mom was talking to Marion about how she'd come home. And her mom's reply is literally just, don't cut us out, Peggy. Like, and, Peggy, again, she's like, I didn't want to cut you out. I never wanted that. Implying that her, she just doesn't like her dad. And I'm interested to see where we go, I'm interested to see what happened. I like how they're not just like, hey, here's Peggy's story, a whole episode. They're peeling away at her story, and I like that. Like an onion. I cannot do a Shrek accent. So anyway, then it cuts to the Russells, and they're basically just like, she's like, he asks her, how'd the meeting go? And she's just like, well, I'm now a member of the board with a ringing endorsement from Miss Barton herself. And Mr. Russell's just like, and Mrs. Morris didn't make any trouble? Miss Russell's like, well, I wouldn't say that. But, and she says that, but Miss Fane, Miss Martin, and Miss Barton and Miss Brooks all ganged up on her. And, he's just like, he sits down and he's like, this is when he tells her, well, that they know what caused the accident. And he said that, it was, it was a broken axle and it was substandard. And he says that, all of the axles on the chain were substandard, not just one. So someone in his organization used old, damaged axles, stealing money, and killing 5 people in the process. And then she's just like, well, we got to control this, she's just like, we got to go on damage control. And he says, the company's taking a bit of a dip, but we seem to be climbing back. And he's like, no, damage control for us. Like, you and me, can we manage the papers? And he's just like, within limits. And then she's just like, okay, good. Because I heard Mr. McAllister. She's just like, I heard Mr. McAllister is going to come over for lunch. What do you think of that? And he goes, well, if you're asking, he literally like sits up in his chair. He goes, well, if you're asking, if you think, he literally like sits up. He's like leans up to her. And he's like, well, if you're asking if I think the fact, he goes, well, if you're asking, I think the fact that 5 men are dead and a member of my staff has blood on his hands is a little more important than whether or not the great Ward McAllister comes here for luncheon. And he gets up and leaves, starts to storm out. And he's like, and she just gets up and is like, it matters to me. I've worked for this, and it matters to me. And he says, even if it doesn't to you. And she goes, and even if it doesn't, can't talk today, man. She goes, it matters to me, even if it doesn't matter to you. And he just snaps back and he's like, well, so you're right there. I don't give a rat's ass where Mr. McAllister breaks his bread. Which is literally like the first, this is like the first time he sort of just like, even raised his voice to her, I think. And that, great man that he is, good guy, he loves his wife. He's like, I'm sorry. But, I like, and then she goes and sits back down. She's like, I know what I want, and I know that I'll get it. And then she goes, by the way, I got a letter, she got a letter from Mr. Baldwin, talking about Gladys. Like, Gladys got another letter from Mr. Baldwin. Remember the guy that they sent away last time? And he's just like, you still open Gladys's letters. She's just like, always. We'll give it to her now. And he goes, we'll give it to her now. And then she said, what did she say? Basically, he's just like, he's basically like, he's getting kind of fed up with her. And he's like, she's just like, but he writes too well. And Mr. Russell's like, then I'll give it to her. And he goes and like snaps the letter out of her hand. And she's like, I love it. He's getting fed up with, kind of fed up with her, which I like. Because I think I expressed in the last episode, in the last episode when she sent off the guy that liked Gladys. It's like, damn, she's kind of like the evil queen. And even he's like, she's being callous about the dead man. She's like reading Gladys's letter. She's like the evil stepmom. But I still love her. She's still awesome. She still like plays it off great. Like I love the evil queen in Once Upon a Time. Yes, I've watched Once Upon a Time too. But it was way off the demographic for that one too. For those of you that don't know, Once Upon a Time was a Disney it was on ABC Family, but it was like a live action show about like Snow White and everything. It was totally marketed for like women in their 40s and stuff. But anyway, it was a great show. I loved it. But anyway, so she's just like, we could lose everything we've worked for, this and that. And she says, I hope you're not going soft on me. And he snaps back and he's like, who am I going soft about? The dead in the train wreck or your only daughter? She's just like, just please don't be soft. Now. Easy now. And then he goes, no one could accuse you of that. This is like their first little spat, And which like, I don't like when they're at odds. But at the same time, he's totally justified. Like, 5 people are dead and you're like screwing over your only daughter. And then it immediately cuts to, he brought Gladys the letter. And she's like, well, what did he do wrong? Talking about Mr. Baldwin. Ooh, not that Baldwin. Anyway, he goes, your mother thinks you're too young for an engagement, that's all. Gladys isn't an idiot. She's like, Gladys isn't an idiot. She's like, but that's not all. If she just said it'd been if she just said, in a year or two, I'd accept that. But she hasn't. She's totally like shot it down. And she's like, she, he's like, yeah, he's Mr. Russell goes, I'm sorry. And she goes, don't pretend. You're the one who set the conditions. And he goes, why do you say that? And Gladys goes, pulls up the letter, and she goes, your father has asked for my word that we will not meet again, or if we do, that we will not speak in any private manner. It's like, shows him the letter, like, look. It's like, because it says right here. And he's just like, your mother thinks it's best. Like, okay, you got me there, but it was your mom's idea. And then she's just like, you're one of the most successful men in the country. With real estate, steel, copper, coal, and oil, railroads, the envy of the world. And you can't stand up to your wife? And he's just like, whew, shit. Kind of looks at her just like, what the And she makes a good point. Like, dude, for your daughter? Come on, man. And and Gladys goes, I suppose you bought him off. And if he took it, he wasn't worthy of me. That's what Mother will say. Like she said, Gladys is not an idiot. I love Gladys. And, Mr. Russell's just like, don't be too hard on him. I made it tough for him to refuse, which he did. He literally told the dude, like, hey, you want to be an investment banker, right? Okay, well, either stay away from my daughter, and I'll help you, and you'll be great, and you'll be super rich, or keep seeing my daughter, and you'll never work in in that sector again. You'll never work in that line of work again. Yeah, that's a pretty fucking tough choice. So basically, they're just, he's just like, hey, your mother loves you, and she wants more for you, and more than an investment banker from Manhattan. And she's just like, well, it's like, what's wrong with that? He's like, nothing, but it's not special. She's just like, oh, I'm not special. Why can't you see it? I'm ordinary. I'm just an ordinary person who wants an ordinary life. And, obviously, Mr. Russell, great dad that he is, he's like, I'm sorry, I just stopped. Yeah, oh my God. Obviously, as great dad that he is, he's like, no, my darling, you are not ordinary. You are anything but. On that, your mother and I are as one. And he kind of caresses her cheek, like, oh, my loving daughter. And then it's warm music. Oh man. So then he leaves. Apparently, Mrs. Russell has also invited Marion to the luncheon with Mr. McAllister. So, and she's telling Aunt Agnes, and that's what it cuts to. It cuts to the Van Ryns, and she's just like, "You're going to accept a dinner invitation from Mrs. Russell?" And Marion's just like, "Should I have not told you and gone anyway?" And Ada is just like, "She could have done that," which I think Ada knows that Marion went to the Russells' party on, I think it was the first episode. At the end of the first episode, I don't think they explicitly said like, "Hey, yeah, Ada knows." Like I don't think she said that she knows, but the way she acted, she kind of like hinted like, "Oh, yeah," like in her own sort of. That's my impression of Ada. But yeah, so I think that she knows. So she's like, yeah, she could have done that. She has before. Basically, Ada is pissed that Mr. McAllister's going. She's just like, these people. You close the door on these people. They're coming through the window. You close the window. They're coming through the chimney. And she's just so like a turtle, just regressing in. And Ada asks, oh, is Mr. Rakes gonna be there? And basically, she's just like, yeah, I think he is. And basically, Agnes makes the point that she thinks that Mr. Rakes is only interested in her because she's like high society. And Ada obviously is like, Agnes, what a horrid thing to say. And Marion, I like Marion. She's not going to take that. She doesn't really take that shit. She literally tells Agnes, like, you're wrong. Like, no, you're wrong. And she's just like, you're wrong, and then walks away. And Marion's just like, Ada's like, oh, she didn't mean that. And Agnes is like, yeah, she did. And mark my words, it'll come back to haunt her. And then it cuts down to the servants, and Bannister is asking Miss Bower, like, "Yay, what were you talking with Ada about or whatever?" Oh, nothing, just nothing. And then, so I'm wondering what they're gonna do with that. Like, is he gonna I don't know, because it doesn't seem like a whole lot. So I don't know. I'm interested in what they're gonna do with that. So the maid brings in one of the she brings in a letter to Bannister, and apparently it's from the Russells, saying that asking him to come over. They need his help with something. And it's just him and Miss Armstrong. Everyone else kind of left. They were all sitting down having their lunch. And Miss Armstrong asks him, like, hey, are you going to go? He's like, well, I don't think I have any other choice but to. My curiosity won't be satisfied any other way. And so he gets up. And Miss Armstrong is just like, hey, Mr. Bannister, aren't you worried about Miss Scott's scribblings? Basically saying that, she doesn't like how Peggy's writing articles and stuff like that. And Miss Bannister's just like, well, why should I be? And, she's just like, well, she's like, I'm just worried that it might come back and, come back on Mrs. Ryan poorly. I just worry. And Bannister's like, of course you do, Miss Armstrong. Like, he's not stupid either. Everyone knows that she's prejudiced. Like, literally everyone. And she, this is what I'm saying. Like, you just gotta make them feel like silly without calling them stupid or silly. I feel like that's the best way. But hey, man, I don't know. It's not what this is about. This is about the Gilded Age. So anyway, it cuts to the Russells, and they're all sitting at lunch, and Larry is saying how Miss Fish. I'm not kidding. I'm not making that up. Miss Fish is having a party for her daughter. And he says it's going to be a doll party, which sounds odd. And saying that Larry and Gladys have been invited. And Miss Russell's just like, okay, you can go, but Gladys can't. And he's just... And I love how... everybody begins to gang up on her. Like, what do you mean? Like, why? Why can't Gladys come over? Miss Astor's daughter is supposed to be there. Listen, and even George, Mr. Russell, he's just like, yeah, I agree. Like, I think she should go. Like, he's not gonna. I love that. Like, he's not gonna bend the knee for her when it comes to his daughter anymore, which I like. Like, I love him standing up for her. Like, hey, you can't keep her around. Like, keep her in this cage. That's freaking great. Love it. So she's just like, I can't stand, I can't stand it when you all gang up against me. So fine, go. So Gladys gets to go to a party. And then we cut to we got to Bannister. He's at the Russells, and he's telling them the English way of doing things. And he's basically saying, like, hey, if you're going to serve asparagus, you got to have a thing, because English people eat it with their fingers, whatever. Basically, he's just telling them, like, he's just going in and saying, hey, you got to do this. Just, basic stuff. Like, hey, you guys just set everything up, and I'll come and tell you what you've done wrong. And obviously, the cook and the butler, they're a little like, when it comes to people in like the service industry in that time and stuff, and probably even now, they don't like somebody else coming in and being like, hey, here's how you do your job. It'd be like whatever job you work at. Think about, like, if your boss asks you to do something that's relatively challenging that you're not used to doing, and you were like, okay, yeah, I can do it. Let's do this. I'm accepting the challenge. I can believe in myself. And then later they come in and they're like, oh, hey, yeah, I'm gonna have someone else come in and tell you how to do this. It's like, well, what the like, it's kind of like, well, it would make you feel as if they didn't feel like they thought less of you, like they didn't, so especially for like the very proud people of the service industry, this is a big slight, So then it cuts to the doll party, and it's one of the creepiest things I've ever seen in my life. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's a bunch of people sitting around with doll. It's a doll party. It's a freaking tea party for dolls. Now, if anyone's ever sat down and like had a tea party, like, oh, here's some more tea, Mrs. Muffet, that's perfectly fine. To a certain age, like, if you're like 15, 16 still doing that, maybe it's time to go out and find some new friends. Or friends, period. These people are literally like my age, like around in their 20s, sitting there with dolls, like in their laps, like what the. And apparently it was all the idea of Mrs. Fish's daughter, obviously, she looks like she's like, I don't know, like 12, 13. She looks young enough to have like a doll to come up with this. But I love it. Like, Mr. Russell, or Larry Russell, he's just like, what the? Him and Gladys are both like, what the hell is going on? And they see Miss Astor's daughter, in the corner crying. And showing Chad. So, it's funny, Gladys comes over, and, Larry, like, they go over to Miss Astor, like, hey, how's everything going? She's like, oh, I'm fine. Everything's fine. I'm okay. And he's just like, what do we do with the dolls? Oh, because here's the rules of the doll party. Miss Fish explained this as they were walking in, as she brought them in. She was like, okay, because he was like, so what do we do? And she goes, you find a doll, and you make sure it has plenty of food and drink for the day, for the party. Like, they literally have dolls just, like, sat all over the place. Like, I've got to do all this shit. Look at this. It's freaking weird. I got to get a good shot of it, because, like, oh my god. It is the creepiest freaking thing ever. But basically, so she sits down. They go over to Mrs. Astor's daughter. That's Miss Fish's daughter. Like, look at this shit. Like, what the? Go around and find a doll. So, they go to Mrs. Astor's daughter, and like, hey, you all right? And Larry is like, oh, I think that's a friend of mine. I'm gonna go over here. And I love that because it's like, he's a dude in 1882 high society. And he's people nowadays. Well, most guys nowadays aren't gonna sit around like with a woman crying, like, or at least some. So, but especially not in those days. Like, you see some woman crying in the corner. There's not gonna be a whole line of people gonna ask her what her problems are, which is unfortunate. I might be one of those guys. I might not. I might say, fuck it. But I don't know. But oh god. So she's just like, they're like, do you mind if, do you want us to go away? Do you mind if we join you? And she's like, oh no, please join me. Like, there's some real food over there. And that's when he's like, oh, okay. Yeah, we'll join you. Oh, hey, look, a friend of mine. I'm going to go over there. But, so Gladys sits down and she's like, Gladys, the lovely woman that she is like, what's the matter? And, basically, Mrs. Astor's, the young Mrs. Astor's problem, I don't know what her name is like, she's like, oh, my mother is impossible. You have no idea what it's like. And Gladys is just like, she's not, but I mean, that's basically what she does. She's just like, you'd have no idea what I'm talking. Like, she goes, she's literally just like, lay it on me. Like, tell me what's wrong. And Mrs. Astor's just like, oh, my mother, it's about a man. And Gladys is just like, who's not good enough for you, right? Like, I love it. Gladys is just like, sister, I already know. So they literally, what do they say? Okay. Yeah, she's like, who's not good enough for you, right? And she goes, she thinks so, but he is. And Gladys is like, we really need to shake on that. So it shows them shaking, and Mrs. Russell's daughter and Mrs. Astor's daughter are fast friends. Literally, like, zooms in on them shaking with a doll in the background. Freaking weird. So then it cuts to basically an extended repeat of the previous scene not the previous scene, but with Bannister and Church. How Bannister is literally sitting there going, so what's this here doing here? And he's like, it's a salad. I gotta go through this. Bannister's like, what's this? He picks up a fork and he goes, what's this? I'm sorry, I just can't, man. These dudes. Church goes, you know what it is, a salad fork. Oh my god. Church is just like so fed up with his shit. He's just like, you know what it is, a salad fork. Oh my god. The show's great. And Bannister's just like, we never lay a fork without a knife. He doesn't actually sound like that. This is a bit more different. Or a spoon without a partner. Nor is a salad a course on its own. It is eaten with the entree or whatever. He's basically just telling him all about the customs. And he's like, and what is this? And he goes, what does it look like, Mr. Bannister? A spoon for the coffee. He's just so fed up with his shit. And then Bannister's just like, no teaspoon is ever laid on an English table. If one is needed, it is supplied at the proper moment. So then Mrs. Russell comes in, and she's wearing that lavender sort of jacket with the sort of stripes that she often wears inside. And Mrs. Russell is just like, Oh, thanks for the help, Bannister. There's so many snares to catch our people. New money is basically saying, because basically this is all sort of like a test for Mrs. Russell, like Mr. McAllister, so many names. Mr. McAllister is basically testing her, like, does she do things the proper way, the English way? And so she's just like, "Oh, I'm sorry, but I'm sorry, Church, but I'm afraid we've asked too much of you, So Bannister, would you mind Would you mind looking over the luncheon? Like basically telling him to like, hey, be our butler and look over the luncheon for the time." And which, as I explained before, that is a huge insult to Church. Like that is a massive insult. That is literally like whatever. Like imagine someone in like whatever profession you're in, whatever job you have, someone like your boss coming in and being like, "Hey, we're gonna have you do this challenging thing," and you're like, "All right, good, I got it." Again, like talking, and then they're like, "Hey, never mind, that's too hard for you. You can't do it. I'm gonna have someone else do it." What the? That's literally what she's doing at Church. Like that is literally what she's doing at Church, and so she asked Bannister like, "Hey, can you sit in? Will Miss Van Ryn, mind?" He's just like, "Well, I don't." He's like, "Well, I can't say it's not going to be a problem." And she goes, "Well, would $100 fix it?" And he goes, $100? Yeah. And he's just like, $100? Yeah. $100, like, that's a good amount of money for shit nowadays. So that was probably like, again, I don't know what the rate is, but I would guess that it's probably a couple $100, at least maybe like $1,000. It could be like $1,000. I don't know. I'm gonna have to look up like the rates or whatever. But I think I have. I just forgotten. I'll have to write it down. But yeah. So she's just like, what about for $100? Yeah, I can do that. So she leaves and Church just like it's literally what Church does to Bannister is behind Church. Church just goes, "Oh, I gotta get this right." He goes turns around and looks at him slowly. So, and then they both give a good bow because they're proper butlers. And Bannister freaking skips across the road. I shit you not. He has a smile on his face because not only is he making $100, butlers also often like to upstage one another. They did this in Downton Abbey when they had the king's butler come over, and he was gonna they were gonna have the king over, and they was like, oh, whenever a butler thinks that he's like better than another butler, it always becomes this war of like, okay, who can outclass each other? And I love it. So Bannister, again, he skips back across the road like, I'm about to prove I'm better. And it cuts to him, it shows him like going, and it cuts to, I guess his name's John, because they call him John again. The footman. Okay, apparently he is just a footman, but they only have, I guess, one footman. Which is pretty, like, which isn't a lot, actually. But they're not a big household. It's literally just, like, the three women living there. They don't do much. So, one footman, a butler, that's, like, yeah, that's more than enough. But honestly, a butler could probably handle it. But it's about class and taste. It's not and it wasn't until like I started watching shows like this where they got into like high society and butlers and like how the rich live that I was like, damn, by like these standards, because they judge a lot of times. They judge people based on like their staff, especially in England. It's like, oh, you don't have a butler and an under butler and a first footman and several other footmen and this and that and that. Oh, you're that like people will like think you'll be a little bit lower on the totem pole, and then I started thinking, damn, Bruce Wayne's only got Alfred. He's his cook, his chauffeur, his butler, his his assistant. I was like, damn. No matter how, I just started thinking about that, like, damn. So that means he's kind of like low compared to all the like. But he's Batman, so it's cooler. But anyway, so it cuts to Mr. Yeah, John. That's his name. But I swear to God, I've heard them call him Jack. I think the cook called him Jack. Maybe the cook doesn't know his name. I don't know. Or maybe they're just fucking with me. I don't know. But he's just like, you want me to be the butler? And Bannister's just like, don't make too much of it, boy. I just want you to serve a perfectly good luncheon to 2 elderly ladies. That's all. He's like, well, what do I tell the others? And he's just like, I tell them I have family business and then oblige me for a few hours. Like, he's not even gonna tell them the truth. He's not gonna tell them that he's over at the Russells. Fuck no. He said, tell them I have family business. And he's like, John, Jacob Jingleheimer Smith, whatever the hell his name is. He's like, all right, I'll do it, Mr. Bannister. But you gotta tell Mrs. Van Ryn. That's my best New York accent. Like that's literally his condition. He's like, all right, I'll do it. But you gotta tell Mrs. Van Ryn. He's like, I'm not. And Bannister's like, okay. He's like, okay, I'll do it. He's just like, of course. And then he's like, better you than me. Walks out. And then it literally says quirky music. I love it. So then it cuts to Marion and Peggy. I don't know why I always seem to have trouble remembering her name. It's Peggy. Every time I'm like, it's Marion and I don't want to say the other one. Okay, so they're basically walking down the street and Marion is gonna she's gonna head to Miss Chamberlain's. She's gonna meet up with her and stuff. And they pass, they're walking down the street and they see Mr. Russell, Larry Russell. He's walking out of a building. He's like, oh, hey. And it turns out to be like the architect's building, like the people that built their house. And, Marion's like, hey, well, what are you doing here? You're not gonna build another house, are you? And basically, he kind of like looks at Peggy like, hey, this is kind of a secret. So, Marion kind of like, hey, go over. So Peggy, walks off for a second. So they sit there talking about how apparently Larry Russell, he wants to get into the architecture business and become an architect. I always wanted to be an architect. So, he's just like, hey, could you? She's just like, I thought you were already in banking. She's like, yeah, but I want to be an architect. Don't tell anyone. Don't tell my parents or anything. So that's going to be interesting. He was getting into banking. I'm going to be. It's going to be interesting to see now that the Russells are a bit more at odds, or at the very least, Mr. Russell is like. He's going to stand with his children more. I feel, which I like. Because Mrs. Russell she doesn't know everything, and some of the things that she's done might not be good. So I like how he's standing with his kids and being like, hey, they're not kids anymore. They're adults, Or at least he's starting to. He did with Gladys. That's why he was like, hey, we should let her go to the party. Like, he was literally like, I agree. We need to let her go to the party. So I would like to see him putting his foot down more. Because like Gladys said, like, you're one of the most powerful men in the country, but you can't stand up to your wife. Like, come on, dude. Like, if something's right, you gotta say it's right. So, I like to see that. Now I'm interested to see what will come of this. What will his reaction be? Because I already know Miss Russell's gonna be like, no, you can't do that. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe she'll be all for it, and maybe he'll be the one who is like, oh, you got to be in banking. It's the family business. But I doubt it. He's very, I could see him being like, I could see him being like, oh yeah, forge your own path, you this and that. So I'm just interested to see how it's going to affect, like, them being more at odds. Like, it's going to be interesting to see, like, more of the drama that unfolds. Ooh, the drama. So, yeah, he walks off, and then I walk off. And then it cuts to her, Marion, and Miss Chamberlain. Miss Peggy, she wasn't going there. She was going to the writing newspaper place, I think. But, or they also mentioned that she just kind of goes and walks with her because her aunts don't like Marion leaving unaccompanied. But also they're friends. Which they're friends. I will not let that go. I'm not going to let that go, Peggy. Still waiting on that apology to Marion. So anyway, they're sitting there having tea, and Marion's telling her that, hey, they want you to come, and hey, there might even be a seat on the board for you. And Miss Chamberlain's not stupid. She's just like, if there was a seat on the board for me, every other seat would be empty. Like they're not gonna. And then I called it. I called it a couple episodes ago. Marion says something like, it seems wrong that you should be punished with in perpetuity, whatever that means. Need a dictionary for this show too. And then Miss Chamberlain goes, I suppose you know my story. I called it back. There would be a time, like, I knew it. Marion was gonna learn what happened to her, say something different, and Miss Russell, I keep wanting to say Miss Russell, Miss Chamberlain would be like, I see you've heard. Called it. Marion's just like, I know what they say. And she goes, well, they say the truth. Yep. It's the unvarnished truth. Which, good on her, not hiding behind it. She's like, yep, I did it. It was me. She says, I broke the rules. And then Marion's like, I think I'm on the brink of breaking them myself. I don't know why that was so difficult for me to say. Another tongue twister. And she's basically, it's Miss Chamberlain is asking, oh, who is he? And she's, telling him, oh, it's Mr. Rakes. He's a lawyer, this and that. And she makes a good point about how she says that if Mr. Rakes was only after her, she tells her that, oh, my aunt said that he's only after me because, I'm high society. But it's like, she goes, but I'm not rich, and he doesn't need her. And she makes a good point. He doesn't need her to get into high society. He's already there. He was at the box next to her. He's at the freaking opera. Like, and he mentions that he was about to go, I think, at the party with Mr. Or no, I think that might be later. But he mentions that he's about to go to a ball or stuff. Like, he's doing all stuff. And basically, she's just like, or she says that, like, what do you know? Miss Chamberlain is like, well, what do you know about him? And she's just like, well, we've only really seen each other, in the park or at the opera. We've only really stolen moments. And Miss Chamberlain, she makes a good point about, like, okay, so basically you don't know this man, She's like, in hardly in other words, your answer against it. And God, I can't talk today. Well, this video is gonna be like freaking 2 hours long. I have to try and edit this one. But yeah, so anyway, she's basically just saying that, like, so basically you don't know this guy. And she's just like, so my aunts say, but what do they know? And she goes, well, they know a great deal. They got a lot of experience in life. And she's basically telling her that, like, you know, she doesn't regret she doesn't regret her decisions in life because she had a great love, you know, and that's what it's all about. Basically just telling her, like, you know, take time and talk it through. And she says, like, hey, you can do it here. You can meet with him and, you know, meet with him here and talk it over. And she's just like, well, why would you do that to me? And she tells Marion that it's because Marion is the only woman who has treated her with, like, kindness and respect ever since her husband died. And she sort of starts to tear up, saying that, you know, when she buried her husband, that was like the end of her life in New York, which is really sad. Because apparently, like, you know, when her husband was alive, everyone was pretty cool to her. But it was like, oh, as soon as he died, it was like, she's dead. I mean, he's dead, so she's dead to us. You know, there was no reason to bring her in, or rather, there was no reason to not keep her out anymore. So then it cuts to Gladys and Mrs. Astor's daughter. They're sitting in Gladys's room, which, it's weird. Gladys has like a bunch of like dolls and like a dollhouse shit, which I don't know. Not a bunch. Maybe a bunch. I don't know. She's got a lot of dolls sitting around. It's weird. And they're basically sitting there talking and giggling. And then Miss Russell comes in. She's like, oh, hey, I heard you had a gathering here, you know. And she says that, basically Mrs. Astor's daughter is just like, hey, I was telling her about this party that we're going to have at, you know, down at this other place. And I was hoping Gladys could come. Miss Russell's just like, oh, well, Gladys isn't out yet. And I've already discussed, you know, what being out means, and that in those days, you know, you had to have like a party, a coming out party, which had a totally different meaning back then. You know, where it's like, okay, now you can get married. So anyway, basically she's like, well, Gladys isn't out yet. And Miss Astor's like, well, she should be soon. I mean, this house is so great. You know, we could throw a ball here. We could dance the quadrilles, whatever the hell that is. And Miss Russell's just like, you dance quadrilles? Whatever that is. It's like, oh, yeah. Basically saying, like, oh, she's basically like lobbying, like telling her, like, hey, you know, I can bring your daughter into high society if you bring your daughter into high society. And Miss Russell's just like, okay. I mean, she's just like, yeah, sure, we can do that. We'll have a big ball or whatever. And then so she leaves, and she like kind of puts her ear up to the door as she leaves to listen in, and she hears them talking because Gladys and Miss Astor's daughter are talking about, like, Gladys goes, she's always like she's always shot down any chance of me, you know, coming out or whatever. And, you know, Miss Astor's like, oh. She seemed to like the idea. You know, basically, so she's, you know, I like how they're friends now. And I'm wondering if this could have been, I mean, this kind of has been her plan all along to get Gladys sort of like, you know, entrenched in the other side. And so, like, she's sneaky. So, then it cuts to Agnes. And she's, oh man, I'm gonna have to make this 2 parts. Ah, buddy. Fuck it. Nah, I'm just gonna make a long video. So then it cuts to Agnes, and she's like, what do you mean family business? Because Bannister is telling her that he's gonna have to leave the luncheon for... he's gonna have to leave the lunch. He can't serve luncheon because he's got family business. It's something about a lawyer. Oh, I gotta go see this lawyer. And and Agnes is just like, well, why don't you just go in the morning? Why was we be put out? He's like, well, he only does business hours from like 11 to 3. like 12 to 3 or whatever. She's like, well, what could take 3 hours? I just love it because she is just so. God. And I love how this gets distorted. You'll see. Because Ada walks in and she's just like, what's the matter? And Agnes goes, Bannister is throwing us out for a lawyer who fasts during lunchtime. And Ada goes, oh, is he Muslim? Is it Ramadan? And I just love that because it's like, she knows what that means. It just seems so out of left field for her to like, one, know what those mean and be like, oh, it just seems so weird for her to say. This friggin' like, oh, is he Muslim? Or is it Ramadan? Oh man. And if you're wondering why is that so funny, because why would she? It just seems odd that she would know about that in 1882. I hardly know about that. But maybe I'm just not as cultured. No, I'm definitely not as cultured and well learned. So, but, oh man. But she's just like, Bannister walks out and Ada's just like, oh, I'm sure he had his reasons. And then Agnes goes, I'm sure she's like, oh, I'm sure Benedict Arnold has his reasons when he sold West Point. Like she is really all he's doing is not serving her luncheon, and she is just like taking this so like, you're leaving us, you betrayer. Like straight up. So then it cuts to what's it called? Ada. She goes up to Marion's. She goes up to Marion's and she's just like, hey, you know how you're going to Mrs. Russell's dinner or luncheon or whatever? Well, could you not mention it because apparently Bannister's having some leaving tomorrow and he's not gonna, so Agnes is put off, and she goes, why is he leaving? And when I saw that I was like, oh shit, I forgot that Marion was going to it too. And then it's like, oh my god, Bannister's gonna be serving the luncheon. I was like, oh my god. And yes, it's gonna be great. We're gonna get to that. It's gonna be awesome. We got 20 minutes of the show left, give or take. Like 19 minutes left. So we can get through this. It's only been an hour and 40 minutes. But most of that is due to me going, okay. Ooh, screw it. It's all one long, uninterrupted day. Which puts a lot of pressure on me to not screw up. Like when my fucking remote. I just switched out the batteries, you son of a bitch. Betrayer! Oh yeah, it is interrupted. I paused. Okay, gotta work again. But so yeah, Marion's like, well, what's up with Bannister? Why is he not gonna be here? And Ada, I love Ada. She goes, I'm not sure. He seems to have gotten involved with some sort of religious lawyer who thinks we're wrong to eat on luncheon. But I may be a bit muddled. Which, yeah, she is. And then it cuts to Agnes. She's getting ready with the help of Mrs. Armstrong, who I didn't know that Miss Armstrong was her lady's maid. I think they might have shown that in the very first episode, at the very beginning, during the opening credits, when they show Agnes like in her room. She's like still in her 90, her hair's not even done up. It's when she's watching like stuff pull up to the Russell's house, at the very beginning. They might have shown her come in, but I'm not sure. So yeah, I didn't know that Miss Armstrong was also and Agnes's lady's maid, as well as the housekeeper. Is she the housekeeper? Yeah. She's the housekeeper. Who the fuck else would be? So yeah, which I'm not sure if that's unusual or not. I mean, I know that there have been instances, at least in Downton Abbey, where the housekeeper served as a lady's maid to the lady temporarily when hers was gone. But I'm not sure if it was like compact. Like I said, they're very I don't want to say understaffed, because they have all the staff they need, really. It's just that they would usually you would have like a housekeeper, a lady's maid, regular maids. Like you would have you'd have the regular maids, like the ones that come and like, start up the fire and stuff like that, and like, fix the beds and shit. And then the ladies' maids specifically take care of like the women. They're like hair. I think I was explaining this before, with like Miss Turner. They also know how to like do hair. They're very fashion conscious and like, hey, this brooch will go good with that and stuff like that. So like I said, like with Adelheid, like that's why she had to read a bunch of books and stuff, because there's a lot to know. Like it's more than just, hey, like, okay, here's your dress, slip it on, tighten this corset up. Like there's more to it. So yeah, so she's also the housekeeper, which I'm not exactly entirely sure what the specific duties of the housekeeper is. From what I've seen on watching Downton Abbey, they seem to be just like the woman who's in charge of the female staff and like bits of the house, I guess. I don't know. I've no fucking idea. They keep the house. I don't know. But anyway, so I just thought it was strange that she was also her lady's maid, or at the very least, I didn't know that she was also her lady's maid. I hadn't even really thought about it. Does Ada have a lady's maid? She might not, because often I don't know. So anyway, she basically Miss Armstrong is like, you don't she's like, you seem preoccupied, Armstrong, what's the problem? And she's saying how she mentions Peggy. She's just like, oh, Miss Scott has oh, let me get to it. She says that you seem very preoccupied, and she's like, you're right, ma'am. I do have some things on my mind. Like, such as, and she mentions that Miss Scott's written an article that's widely talked about, and I'm just concerned that it might trace back to this house. And Agnes called her the fuck out. She goes, I hope this concern has nothing to do with your prejudice against Miss Scott. And she goes, prejudice, ma'am? And Agnes goes, please learn to control it. Like, she ain't having it. Like, why do you say that, man? And then she goes, I will say more. If you continue to make trouble for Miss Scott, I will be angry. You are warned. That's and then she looks in the mirror, looks herself over. Well, we'll have to do. Thank you, Armstrong. I learned some charity. Wait, what was that? Well, it'll have to do. Thank you, Armstrong. And learn some charity in the future. So yeah, Armstrong's like making the beat look being made to look a fool by like everybody at every turn. Every time she tries to voice her prejudice or voice her opinion, people are like, nah, you're wrong. You're stupid. Why are you like that? What I like to see. I like how it's not just like, like, oh, they're all racist. Like, yeah, when Peggy first showed up, they were like a little, not even cautious, just like they hadn't really dealt with a lot of black people. I'm sure. So they were just they didn't know how to react. Like, they didn't know what to do. They were, I don't know. But she was the only one. She's so far the only one, except for the maid, the kitchen maid. She was originally prejudiced, but I didn't really have. I don't think that was more much to do with the color of her skin. It was more to do with the fact that she thought that black people were coming up and like trying to steal their jobs and stuff. So it was more from like, I feel it was more from like an economic standpoint than like a society, like color, like a racial standpoint, you know, because uh, she changed her opinions, you know, after she like got to know Miss Scott and like, you know, after the whole thing with Miss Bauer and how she confided into her and like, you know, all that, which we haven't really seen much of the maid at all. She's had a line like here and there. Like she's got like like one line in this episode, like a handful of lines this episode, but she's not really in it. But she's sort of the one that's kind of like been evolving the most. Like she got over her prejudices against Peggy. She seems to be okay with John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt now. You know, she's kind of like she's okay with him, like she's cool with him. So she seems to be like she seems to be the one who's sort of like getting over her stuff, which is good, which I like to see that. Her evolving and changing as a person, like that. So then it cuts to Mr. Russell and Clay. They're riding around in the carriage, and he's asking him, "Hey, has Mr. Pinkerton found anything yet?" And he's like, "Yeah, they've found stuff. Yeah, they've come up with a great deal, and they'll have something solid soon." I have so many shit. And basically, Mr. Russell's like, "Okay, well, hurry up because they're finalizing the designs on the station soon, and he can't have this hanging over us." And so Clay's just reassuring him, like, "Yeah, we'll have something soon. We'll get this taken care of." And then it cuts to Bannister. He's leaving. He's leaving to go over. And it's funny. He walks out the door. A little gate thing that they have, you know, walks out, walks to the right, you know, down the sidewalk, stops, looks up at the window. Is anyone watching? Is anyone watching? Nope. Skips away. He like literally like sort of like runs along, like jogs across the street, goes into the goes. Yeah. Oh man, imagine not being able to itch your nose. So it cuts to Bannister, and he's expecting the troops. This is a huge insult. He's like, "Oh, Mr. Church, will you join us?" Has to go and get in line with the footmen. Whoa. Whew. Like, again, like this is a huge insult. And I mean, for butlers, like especially, I mean, it's a huge insult for any profession, as I mentioned. But like butlers take very like a whole like they're very prideful. Like they're really, you know. Not saying that anybody else doesn't take pride in their work. I'm just saying like it's a very big deal for them. I'm not saying that wouldn't be as big of a deal. So anyway, he walks out. He dismisses everybody, and then he walks off. And then the cook comes up and talks to Church, and he's like, Church is just like, "This is intolerable. We can't." And the cook's just like, "It's worse than intolerable. It's ridiculous." And then Church, he starts walking off, and he's just like, "I'll be back in a moment." And he leaves. And then it cuts to the Van Ryns. And the Van Ryns, the staff, they're like freaking out because they don't have Bannister there. The butler's not there, and John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt's got to handle it all by himself. And he's freaking the hell out. They're all asking, like, "What about gloves? Are you a footman or a butler?" and the little maid's just like, "Don't worry him." She's Irish or something, but which I am too, so I can have an Irish accent. So basically, they're just like, hey, do you wear gloves? See, they just fucking called him Jack. She just called him Jack. Is it like a nickname? Why would your nickname be Jack if your name's John, you sons of... Oh my god. They're fucking with me. I swear to God. Whoa, man. Or maybe they... Oh. Fuck it. Moving on. So anyway, he's just basically like, do you wear gloves? Because footmen wear gloves. That was something that Bannister... he said that. He asked that of the footmen just now. It wasn't that important, but now I'm going to bring it up. I was going to bring it up then, but I didn't think it was that important. But then I forgot that the gloves are kind of important for this. So here we are. Bannister asked the footmen, do they wear gloves? Because footmen wear those like white gloves. You know, when you see like people in like anytime you see like a big high society party or at a ball and stuff, those guys with like the white gloves carrying the platters of food and stuff, those are usually like the footmen. The butler will either not be carrying a plate of food, will usually not be carrying a plate of food unless they're like the Van Ryns and they don't have a huge staff. But the butler will usually be walking around, inspecting everything, making sure everything's going all right, and moving events from like one thing to another. That's not the other thing I've talked about. The butler really runs the house. Like, they're not like, they don't go, oh, okay, we're going to eat now. No, the butler comes in and tells them, hey, lunch is ready. It's time to eat. Like, you know, they have specific times that they eat, you know. And the butler comes in and tells them. And, like, they're, like, if I mentioned this in Downton Abbey, like, you know, the butlers, this is what I mean when I say they're very prideful. They run the house. They're not just like a servant. They do, like, run the house and run events and stuff. They're in charge of a lot of stuff. So, yeah, so it's very insulting for Miss Russell to come in and just be like, hey, yeah, no, that's too tough for you. We're going to have this guy do it. But, yeah, so anyway, he asked them if they wear gloves. And they're like, yeah, and they're like, yes, we do. We put them on. Like, and he's like, put the gloves on before you walk in and then take them off after you walk out of the dining room, which is really complicated. And he does the same thing. And I brought that up because he does the same thing for Jack. He's like, when you're serving food, don't wear gloves. But when you're serving wine, wear gloves. When you're serving food, wear the gloves. When you're serving wine, don't wear gloves. Or vice versa. I don't remember. It'll get to it. And they're just like, that sounds a bit complicated, because he's explaining it to him. He's like, well, this is what Bannister told me to do. He told me to take the gloves off. Here it comes. Mr. Bannister says I'm to wear the gloves when I serve the food, but not when I pour the wine. And the maid, they're just like, isn't that complicated? And the maid is just like, it's okay, you can handle it, can't you, Jack? I'm going to stop saying his name, because every time I do, it pisses me off. And then Mrs. Armstrong, she's got to get a little quip in. She's like, make sure your hands don't shake when you're pouring the wine. And he goes, what? Why would they shake? Like, it won't shake, will it? And then the cook is like, well, you better go in and tell them luncheon is ready. And this is what I mean. Like, the cook goes in and tells them. The butler. They don't tell the butler, hey, we're ready to eat now. Tell the cook. No, the butler comes in and is like, hey, we're going to eat now. Hey, dinner's ready. Luncheon's ready. Breakfast is ready. We're going to eat now. So he goes in. So he starts to go in, and it's really cool the way they like kind of segue this. I'm not gonna show this. Oh my god, 2 hours almost. So like I like the way they did that. So they segue into it. Okay, now this is one of my favorite parts right here, because you just saw Marion walks in the door. She's taking like 5 steps into the door, and then she looks over. She's like, tell Mr. Church I am. She hears that talking, and it's Bannister. Bannister? Oh, shit. I swear to God, that's the same face he made when Pumpkin got off the leash. That. And she's just like, he's like, yeah, as you saw, he like walks up to her and he's like, God, I love this show. She's like, what are you doing here? He goes, Mrs. Russell never mentioned you were coming. I assume Miss Van Ryn is in the dark. Like, that's what Marion tells him. I love it. He's just like, Mrs. Russell never mentioned you were coming. And she's just like, don't worry, your secret's safe with me. Oh, man. So then, Mr. McAllister, freaking Nathan Lane, got a little, I just love the way he looks. He just looks so, like, he's got that, like, southern accent. Well, he'd be wearing suspenders and a bow tie. One of those little, what the hell are those called? Mr. Beauregard Sanders. So he walks in, and, like, church has literally been, like, relegated to, like, a footman. Not just for the luncheon, but, because Bannister is literally the one that comes in. Like, he's literally temporarily, I can't stop saying literally. He has been, temporarily as the butler. Like, he's the butler. He's, like, basically in charge of the house for a little while. Which is, again, a massive insult to, church. Blasphemy. But, basically, he comes in and he's like, he's just like, I'm only sorry I'm underdressed. I feel like I should be wearing court liveries with periwing and red heels. I guess, I'm not, like, I haven't thought about, I don't think I mentioned it, but I've always thought, like, the liveries that their footmen wear, the Russell's footmen wear, and, like, those are liveries. Like, the little uniforms that they wear. I'm pretty sure I've been over that before. But, the liveries that they wear, like, I always thought that they were really freaking, like, just too much, you know, like, whoa. And, cause, like, that's why I was confused about whether or not, John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt was a footman or an under-butler, because he's dressed like, he's wearing the same kind of livery, like the shit that he wears, that is just like, you know, a black kind of, like, suit sort of thing with a tie. That is also, like, a basic livery that they would wear in English times. Like, that's what the footmen wear in frickin' Downton Abbey. So, those ones, the only time they wear those big, like, sort of, like, flashy things, like, the only time I've ever seen those is when it was literally the king's footmen. Like, royal court footmen. So, I'm just wondering, like, I feel as though theirs are a bit, like, I think theirs are way too much. They need to tone it down. Because apparently John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt is a footman. He's not an under butler. He's not a butler. But I was confused because of the liveries. I thought that maybe they did it differently in America. Because, like, that's why they had these big liveries. But yeah. So that's why he's like, I feel like I should be in court liveries. Because I don't think they should be dressed that fancy. I don't think their footmen should be dressed that fancy. Or that gaudy. Jesus. So yeah. So he comes in, he announces, Bannister announces Ward McAllister. He's like, Mr. Ward McAllister. And he's just like, Mr. McAllister is just like, what surroundings, Mrs. Russell? We could be at Sardskoye Cello. You laugh. But how the fuck you pronounce that? I thought so. Anyone who pronounced it correctly, you shut up. Oh, hold on, I gotta see how you pronounce. What? Let me use some movie magic. How do I remember? What is it called? SARS-CoV-2. That's what it was. I remembered. I just gotta use the old noodle. So anyway, and if you don't know what that is, don't feel bad. Neither does Mrs. Russell. I think. I don't think she does. Based on her reaction, she goes, ah. And she literally looks at Miss Fane behind her. And Miss Fane goes, Catherine the Great would feel quite at home here. And I think in so many ways. And I think my knowledge of 18th century, late 18th century monarchs is limited at best. I think, based on the spelling of the place, I think in vague memories, I think Catherine the Great was Russian. I'm not sure. So anyway, but yeah, even she doesn't. She's like, help me. She's like, how flattering you are. And he asks, you admire the Empress? And Miss Russell goes, I love their back and forths. I love their little interactions with each other. It's great. He goes, you admire the Empress? And she goes, do you? He goes, of course. Of course. She reminds me of Mrs. Astor. Seriously, they all chuckle. Like, what? Of course. She reminds me of Mrs. Astor. Now, granted, he doesn't grab his lapels and lay back with it, but oh man. So then it cuts to, doesn't really cut to, it just shifts to the camera over to what's his name talking to what's her name, Marion talking to Mr. Rakes. All chuckles, cracks me up. And she's basically asking him, like, hey, how's everything going in New York? It's like, oh, it's splendid. Not as splendid as this, though. I'm off to the ball. I'm off to the opera tonight and the ball tomorrow. Party at Long Island. And she's just like, well, how can I compete with that? And he goes, well, I want to see more of you. I have to press my advantage if I have one. And she's just like, you haven't done badly so far. So they go off to, oh my God. They all walk off to, what did I say? No subtitles. Oh, fuck it. Okay. Now, this kind of bugged the hell out of me. Because look at how close these candles are to these freaking flowers. Ooh, caviar. Never had caviar. What? Okay, sorry. Like, look how close those are to those candles. I'm just like, well, yeah. What the hell? It's pretty close. It's just like, how are they not gonna catch fire? I don't know. But I love this dude, man. He walks in and he sees it and he goes, oh man. Like, oh, look how pretty. And he goes, hi. Screw you guys. What am I, a thesaurus or what's the one that? Screw you guys. What does he say? Okay, he goes, hyacinths and lilacs at this time of year? Next you will make the blind see and the lame walk. Which is, of course, met with chuckles. You think I'm kidding? Thank you. I'll be here all week. Okay, she's like, come and sit by me. Right here. Right next to Mama. So, apparently, they all have, not apparently, literally, they all have, like, gifts. Like, what a freaking... Gave them all fancy jeweled stuff. And she gives him a badass, like, Acco case or something? Cigarette? I don't know. I mean, I've got... got one of these old... Freaking... One of these old cigarette cases. I don't smoke cigarettes, but... So... It was a gift. Kinda. Anyway. She goes... he's like... He's just looking at it and she goes... I hope it's not too much. And he goes... Nothing. Ms. Russ, he says, I gotta get exactly what he says so I can get it right. She goes, it's not too much. He goes, my dear Mrs. Russell, nothing is ever too much for me. They didn't put chuckles, but they all did chuckle. So then it cuts to old John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt serving the food. And the first thing anyone says, Ada says, should you be wearing gloves if you're the butler today? He goes, Mr. Bannister told me to wear them while I was serving the food, ma'am. Oh. And Agnes is so freaking salty. I love it. She goes, you're the Bannister. Okay. She goes, you're the Bannister. You're the butler now, John. Do they not know his name? Do the people downstairs? What the fuck is this guy's name? Like, what? Damn you, Julian fellows! Oh, man. So she goes, you're the butler now, John, not Bannister. Who throws us over on a whim to please an itinerant monk. I think he's some sort of religious guy. Oh my god, I love it. And John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt. That's what I'm going to call him from now. That's his name for me from now on. He goes, thank you, man. As if my videos weren't long enough. Now I got to say John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt every time I talk about this dude. He has this... Obviously, he's so, like, completely out of his element. Because she's like, hey, he's about to serve Ada. And she's like, hey, may we have some wine? And now he's got to take the gloves off and get the wine. And then he's like, and his hands are shaking. And he accidentally spills a little bit of red wine. And while he's trying to get it up, Ada's like, may I have something to eat? Oh, yeah. Goes, puts the wines up, puts the gloves back on. While he's doing that, Ada's just like, Bannister seems to have made things really complicated for you. And then Agnes, she is so pissed at Bannister, she can't even recognize how, like, massively this dude is fucking, like, messing up. She goes, well, don't worry. We'll report back to him that you've passed your test. Oh, for the love of... She says, oh, like, we won't... Yeah, she said, we'll report back that you passed your test with flying colors. We will not give him the satisfaction of thinking he was missed. Like, Jesus Christ, baby, it's one luncheon. And then the maid kind of like pokes the door open. She's like, hey, this was on the map. She left her, there was a letter, and Agnes gets the letter. She reads it. She goes, "What?" Immediately throws down her thing and storms out. I gotta show this. She goes, "This is too much." Agnes, and Ada's called Agnes, "Don't do anything you'll regret." And this, man, have some wine. I fucking love Ada. Oh, and she goes, "Oh, you can leave the gloves on." First time I've ever seen Agnes walk like outside of the house. I mentioned that last time that I've seen her like whatchamacallit, walk like, I mean, she's been in the carriage and stuff, but this is the first time I've ever seen like leave the house. So it's out. She checks, she sees that, look, she is stunned. She can't admit it, but she is definitely stunned. Just standing there, now the reason Church is there and not what's his name? Bannister. Like I said, because Bannister is sort of like the de facto, like he's the temporary butler. But since it's lunchtime, he would be presiding over the lunch. I just like to, like, because not everybody knows about all these little, like, little things and, like, little rules and stuff about, like, butlers and all that shit. I watched, like, 6 seasons of Downton Abbey. Big castle right there. Great show. Love it. And that's, like, 6 seasons of that, plus the movie. Oh, my God. I keep forgetting they have another movie coming out in March, right? Oh, my God. Oh, it is March, isn't it? No, it's not. Yes, it is. Aha, it's March now. I need to change my calendar. Okay. So yeah, after like 6 seasons of that plus a movie, I've picked up on a lot of these little like rules and stuff. So I'd just like to explain that explain that because it does actually have an effect on the story. Like it is important to the story. So I had to get that. I had to get that. I had to get that reaction. That was great. Like he said, "Oh my God." She's like, "Bannister, do my eyes deceive me?" And he's just like, "Well, you see." And Miss Fane pulls him from the lion's den. She goes, "And Agnes, what a surprise!" And Agnes sort of like looks around and like sees that it's Marion. Well, she knew Marion was gonna be there, but she sees like Mr. Moore McAllister, Miss Fane there. Miss Fane is just like, "Miss Russell never said you were coming." And Miss Russell looks kind of like worried. She's like, "What the fuck's going on?" She's like, "What's going on?" She's like, "What's gonna happen?" And Marion, she kind of saves Agnes because this is a super embarrassing thing for Agnes to do. Like this was like the wrong thing to do. You don't go barging into other people's like luncheons and stuff in high society. Like no. There's a big no. Massive faux pas. So Marion tries to save her. It's like saves her, and she's like, she's just looked in to pay her compliments to Mr. McAllister, haven't you, Aunt Agnes? And he's just like, "Mrs. Van Ryn." And another thing, all the men stand up. Like whenever a woman enters the room, all of the men stand up. Mr. Russell, Mr. McAllister, Larry. Is Larry there? I don't think Larry's there. Mr. Rakes, Mr. Fane. Use it. Like they all. Anytime a woman enters the room, they all stand up. Yeah, it wasn't the best angle, but you get the point. So, I keep wanting to call her Miss Fine. Damn it. Damn you, Franny. Anyway. She's like, "Oh, Mr. Rakes," and Agnes is like, "Oh, how could I forget?" And Mr. Russell's just like, "Can we persuade you to sit down and join us, Mrs. Van Ryn?" And they're literally trying to save her now. Like, they're trying to save her from massively embarrassing herself. Like, 'cause Mrs. Fane is like, we must have eaten luncheon earlier than you imagined. Like, you thought we'd still be in the drawing room. Because it was not, like I said, unless you were coming to, like, come and sit.
God, look at Church's face.
She's like, you thought we'd still be in the drawing room, didn't you, Aunt Agnes? And she's just like, oh man, I need to get a shot of that. Like, oh, come on. Like, boom. That is the show right there. Like, it's new money, and they're all like old money, and they're all like the new money. And now she's seeing it. Like, she's seeing, like, oh my God. Like, these people are against me. Her time is coming to an end. Like, she's literally standing there alone. She's got dust in her dress now. And just seriously, like, embarrassed herself. And Miss Russell, she's just like, I mustn't interrupt your party. And she leaves. But like, oh my God. And she goes, Marion was right. I must have misread the clock. Because, like, for her to, like, look in, and as she's leaving, she looks over at Bannister and goes, heads have rolled for less. So they're all just like, oh man, that was crazy. And she goes, oh. There's like, oh, that was crazy. Like, Mr. McAllister is just like, he's like, I must come to your luncheons more often. They're going to be so lively. Now, nothing to do with the plot. I've just never actually, like, seen this in real life, I don't think. Like, oh, what world we learn. I adore you. That had nothing to do with the plot. They were just like, hey, what if we had a woman in a nice dress and with a parasol and a canoe, having another dude and and everything, row her down the freaking stream for no reason. Yeah, sounds good. Put it in. Oh man. And then we cut to Mrs. Turner. She's walking down the park walking through the park with Mr. Van Ryn, Oscar Van Ryn. Because remember, she's like now his informant. And she's telling him that, she's basically telling him that, like, you know, Mr. Russell is the one that you need to convince. Like, the one you need, if you're going to get into the house, if you're going to, like, try and get with Gladys, Mr. Russell is the one you need to, you know, get on the good side of. And he goes, like, well, I thought Mrs. Russell was the one who made all the decisions and stuff. She was like, yeah, she is, but Mr. Russell loves his daughter. He's not going to let anybody near her. And she's like telling him, like, hey, you know, show sympathy. Show them, you know, they're having a hard time right now because of the plane. I almost said plane. Because of the train crash. But it's like, when was the last time you heard of a train crash? When was the last time you, like, rode a train? I've ridden a train once in my life. Like, a legit, like, passenger train when I was, like, freaking 4 or 5. Probably younger. But it's like, when was the last time you saw a train that wasn't fucking up your traffic? Oh shit. I didn't remember to have my charger in this thing. I'm at 15%. Can't have this thing dying when I only have a half hour left on this video. I'm kidding. Jesus. It's only 6 minutes left in the episode. Come on. Okay, but yeah, basically he's telling him, like, she's telling him, you know, be nice to them. They're having a tough time right now. Show sympathy. You lost some points because you didn't stick with them when the alderman thing was going on. And she mentions that the police want to talk to Mr. Russell. And she asks, he asks, will they find anything? And she's like, how should I know? I'm only telling you he's vulnerable. And Mr. Van Ryn, Oscar, he says, and when you're vulnerable, you appreciate support. So that's what he's going to do. He's going to try and support him. And so he pays her. She's just like, but I don't do it for the money. He goes, I'm well aware of that. You want revenge for some reason, but I don't need to know why. But we know why. It's because she's an idiot. Freaking moron. Oh, buddy. And then Miss Armstrong is just leaving the downstairs, and she sees Oscar and Miss Turner talking. They're just coming out from the park, and she sort of like puts her hand on his shoulder and smiles. They have a laugh about something, and she sees it, and he walks back in. I mean, Miss Armstrong, sorry, and walks back in. And then later, it shows Marion. So many freaking names in the show. I need to have my list of names right here somehow. Or it's on my lap. Okay, anyway, Marion's sitting there talking to Peggy, and she's just saying how she felt sorry for Aunt Agnes, and sorry and ashamed of herself. She's just like, she goes, you should have seen her standing there alone. She was like Custer, a little bighorn or whatever. It was like Custer's last stand, and literally, basically is. And she says she's facing the annihilation of everything she believes. And then Peggy asks, why not help her find a place in the new world? Find her own place. And she goes, easier said than done. Yeah, I can't see Aunt Agnes. I was shocked she left the house. Not in a carriage for a stroll around the park. I was like, oh my God, she's leaving the house. Stoop kid left to stoop. If you get that, you're awesome. If you don't, you're still awesome, but I think less of you. I'm kidding, I don't. Just means you didn't watch Hey Arnold when you were a kid. So then it cuts down to the Mr. Bannister. He's talking with the cook and John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt, and the cook's like, so what happens now? It's what's gonna happen next? And he's just like, I don't know. She won't speak to me. And then he goes, I hear you did well today, John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt. And he goes, thank you, Mr. Bannister. I'm glad you've been told that. And I'm sorry I gave her the letter. He's like, not your fault, but I need to find out who wrote it. And Church wrote it. Church definitely, he 1,000% wrote it. That's why he walked off. He wrote it. I don't know what exactly the letter said. I might see if I can pause it sometime later and get a good look at it. But I couldn't really see it much. But I'm guessing it was something about hey, Mr. Bannister's at the Russells giving their luncheon. I wanted to have Mr. Russell as my thumbnail, for my videos. I wanted him to be all of them, but I can't. That one is just I'll have to think of something to come up for that. Jesus Christ. Oh man, I need to sleep and eat. Jesus. So yeah, I'm gonna come up with something for that. He looked like Count Dooku getting his hands cut off. That's what he looked like. Oh my God. Or Saruman getting stabbed in the back. That was freaking priceless. Oh man. So he's just like, I gotta figure out who wrote that letter. I should talk to Miss Armstrong. She has an ear for what's going on in the other house. And, the cook warns him, hey, don't jump to conclusions. Which, Does she? I don't remember Miss Armstrong ever being, like, appraised of what the hell's going on over there. I don't know. Maybe I forgot. I don't know. So anyway, Armstrong comes in and to Miss Van Ryn's house. House. She already lives in the house. Ding. But, because, she's her lady's maid. She comes in, bringing her, like, tea or whatever at the end of the night. She's like, hey, do you want some warm milk to help calm you down? Yeah. Agnes says that she allowed herself to act on impulse today, Armstrong. Something she should never do. To act on impulse is to make oneself a hostage to ridicule. And she goes, I'm sure these Armstrong says, I'm sure these betrayals must be very upsetting. And she says, what do you mean, these betrayals? Have there been others? And she says, it was just something I saw. I thought you knew. Knew what? And Agnes obviously goes, knew what? And she goes, about Mr. Oscar. And Agnes is like, tell me at once. And they did this thing. They did this with the maid and the cook when they whispered in their ear. We don't actually get to hear what she says and what she's like accusing her of, but we can be pretty sure. It literally says whispering indistinctively. Guys. So I'm gonna take a wild guess and tell her and say that she told her that the maid, the lady, like Mrs. Turner and Mr. Russell are like, a thing. And Agnes is literally like, Mrs. Russell's maid? Are you sure? And she says, servants in neighboring houses do know each other, ma'am. And Agnes is just like, leave me. And she said, should I give a note to Mr. Bannister? And she says, never mind, Mr. Bannister. What is Bannister to this? There's nothing more you need. And she goes, leave me now. Like, whoo. I didn't think that, and that's still one more thing. Mr. Russell gets a telegram, and Miss Russell, she comes in, she's like, hey, I'm going to bed, thanks for all your help today, give him a hug and kiss from behind. And Aurora, that's what Miss Fane's first name is. Lovely name. So she's like, hey, what's the telegram? She's like, oh, it's from Clay. He says they found the man responsible for the axles. His name is Dixon. Sounds familiar. He's the head of the team of the engineering. Of course he would be, typical. And he says, apparently the guy says that Mr. Russell gave the order. And the police are saying he has proof, written proof, that Mr. Russell gave the order to give those to put those screwed up axles on. And it's like, no, he didn't. I mean, obviously not. That's not, I really doubt that's what they're trying to say. Like, oh, did he do it? Like, did he do it? It's like, no, he didn't do it. That's not what they're doing. The point is, it could ruin him. Maybe that's the point they're trying to make. Don't jump to conclusions, like the cook said. If you jump to conclusions behind you can't jump to conclusions. Could ruin people's lives. Don't jump to conclusions. Make sure you got all the facts right. Don't go accusing people of stuff that they didn't do. But yeah, and that's how the episode ends. The episode was backing up. Like they said they have proof. They have written proof. Boom, 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 boom. Doesn't even say dramatic music. It just has some of those little music notes. But anyway, so yeah, that's how the episode ends. Oh my God, this was absolutely incredible. And Jesus, this is a long video. Sorry about that. It's about an hour long. I don't know why the hell it took so long. Because I was just out of it today. And this episode's a little bit longer. It's about 10 minutes longer than the usual episode, so that's about an hour of my time. Yeah. Jesus. But yeah, oh man, this is another big. Wasn't just a setup episode. I like how we're getting closer and closer. As the series develops, so we're getting a lot of stuff. Really juicy. Oh man, Agnes going over there. That was like the highlight of the episode for me. That was the just seeing her. This is too much. She just throws her thing down and storms out, and like walks across the. You can see the dirt and everything getting in her dress. Like, oh my god, she was not having that. I loved her reaction when she walks in to the palace, like the palace. I literally just call it the palace. It's a freaking palace. She's like, that's literally all she can do. And how could you not? Like, holy shit, the place is nice. I've never even actually been in it. So yeah, it's and the I'm seeing a massive rivalry between church and state. I mean Bannister. I couldn't help it. They just come to me. But I'm seeing a massive rivalry come up between church and Bannister, and I love it. Who can outbuttle the other? Ooh, that doesn't sound very PC. Screw it. But yeah, this is great. We're seeing we might get to see Agnes. She's starting to get her. She's getting out there more. She might actually come out. That'd be cool to see. And then and she's making friends with she's making friends with the Astors, which is exactly what Mrs. Russell wanted to do. So I'm like, has this been? There's no way she could have could she have? I mean, because the way she acted when she was leaving the room, leaving the door, it was almost as if she planned for all this, but she couldn't have. She couldn't have known. Well, I mean, technically, it was her plan to get Alice into the thing. So I mean, I guess that was it. But she couldn't have known that she would have been at the party, and if they would have been become friends at the party, that weird freaking doll party. Stuff was creepy. Gotta rush back through these scenes so I can. But yeah, massive rivalry between Butlers. It's Butler versus Butler, 1882. Agnes is starting to really realize that she's sort of getting ostracized, like they said in. Like Miss Fine told Mrs. Russell, if about Mrs. Astor, if Mrs. Astor doesn't let in the new people, then they'll make their own little clubs and have their own little cliques and keep her out. So that's why Mrs. Astor is letting in the new people, like Mrs. Russell, as long as the proper steps are taken, as long as she's good enough, as long as she does things the English way and this and that, all that stuff and other. But Agnes is kind of making a mistake of not doing that, of being like, no, screw them, we're keeping our own stuff. We don't care how rich they are, we don't care. Screw them. Which is going to be her too, it's going to be to her detriment, I feel. What else was I saying? Peggy's making a little bit more headway on her art, on her articles and stuff. That's good. I could see Mrs. Chamberlain, whatchamacallit? This has nothing to do with Peggy. I could see Miss Chamberlain get a little bit more into high society with the charity and the Red Cross. I doubt it. I mean, I'm not sure. I would like to see I would like to see how other people try and deal with her, because literally the only person that we've ever seen interact with her is Marion, as far as I can remember, and that one dude at the Bloomingdale's. And that's really it. And he was just like, oh, hello, Mrs. Chamberlain, good to see you again. That was literally it. So I'd be curious to see how other people are going to react to her, and how other people treat her. Because Marion treats her just fine, but Marion doesn't give a shit about that stuff. So I'm just really interested to see how that how that plays out. And what was it? What's his name? Larry wants to be an architect. Again, I'm more interested in the repercussions of that action than the actual action. Like, who he wants to be an architect? Nah, cool, I don't care. I'm more interested to see what his parents have to think. Oh my god. Oh, you want to be an architect? Cool. What do your parents have to say about that? And now we've got I'm gonna love to see how Agnes treats Bannister next episode. That's gonna be awesome. Now, like, cause obviously, I wonder if she's gonna. Oh my god, could she fire him? Nah, she's not gonna fire Bannister. John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt wasn't up to the task. Oh man. But yeah, I was actually kind of surprised that Mrs. Armstrong would go to. Oh, and that's something I'm not sure if I mentioned this before. Mrs. Armstrong, the housekeeper / lady's maid, she's not married, and I don't think that she ever has been. But housekeepers are referred to as Mrs. As a Mrs. For instance, Mrs. Hughes in Downton Abbey, and I'm going to keep calling back Downton Abbey anytime I feel as though it pertains to the situation. Mrs. Hughes in Downton Abbey, she was called Mrs. Hughes, but she wasn't married. You know, it's just how they did things. So anyone who's like, well, where's her husband? What's going on with that? She doesn't have a husband. I don't think she ever had a husband. I doubt she ever will have a husband. Yeah. Well, anything else major? No, nothing really major that I can think of off the top of my head. But yeah, I was surprised. Oh, I'm also really interested to see what Miss Van Ryn, what Agnes is gonna do about Oscar next time she sees him. Oh my god, or Mrs. Turner, like what? I think it's the same thing with Miss. Is she called Mrs. Turner or Miss Turner? I think she's just called Miss Turner. I don't think they call her Mrs. If they have, then maybe it's the same with the lady's maid, but I don't think so. And they're also often referred to, like, or simply as their last names. For instance, she'll just call her Armstrong. And then it changes, like, if they become married, like, it's all complicated, it doesn't matter. But yeah, so that's, and we had Bannister see, Mrs. Bauer give her the money. He didn't see her give her the money, but he saw her talking to her and was wondering why. Because it's really weird for a cook to be upstairs at any time. Like, the cooks didn't go upstairs. Like, even like the maids, like it was like for like that's why it was weird for when the maid sort of pops her head in the door with the note. That's why she just pops her head in the door. Like, she's not supposed to be up there really. Like, they don't go upstairs. A few times, like, it's just funny. Like, the one, yeah. So that's pretty much. Yeah. So sorry, that's pretty much it. If you like this exceedingly long video, go ahead, leave a like, subscribe, share, comment, tell me what you think. Tell me what you think's gonna happen in the show. I love getting these little little discussions going. It's great. And it really helps, build my channel. YouTube's algorithms suck. Like, because I pay attention to, like, I'm trying to build my channel, so I'll look up, like, how my videos are doing, and I watch, what I mean is, when I look up one of my videos, how far do I have to scroll down to, like, get to my video? And I feel like they keep pushing my shit down. Yeah, it's because other people are doing better, but screw those guys. So yeah, it really helps with the algorithm if y'all like, subscribe, share, leave comments and stuff. Again, as always, thank you all for y'all support. I love doing it. I love watching this show. I love talking about it, and I love making these videos. Really fun to just go over this stuff. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Anyway, again, thank you for watching. Thank you for your support.